We have the concept of a plan for a podcast about Kamala Harris's masterclass in debating a sweaty pile of bait-swallowing anger. They're eating the pets. Welcome back to the podcast for the 54% of Americans who regularly vote for progress in every election and want to convince their friends and family members to join our majority. This is Majority 54.
All right, Jason, this was by far the most important collective moment that we had left on the calendar for this election. And needless to say, it went pretty well for our side. Yeah. Let's just get right into it. Let's start as they started with the handshake.
Kamala Harris. Let's have a good debate.
Nice to see you. Have fun.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Loved this moment. I've been like doing such a deep dive on the debate histories, and I'm going to try not to be annoying about it. But this was a moment because this hasn't happened in the Trump era where there's been a handshake, which
because
who knows what the common denominator is.
Of a human being.
It could be
that people who debate him are like, I'll tell you what I'm not going to do. I won't be shaking his hand. Like,
yeah.
Wow.
What did you think of this decision?
I think it was a decision that they spent a lot of time on. And I think my expectation is that she probably made the decision to do this the day that she said from the stump, say it to my face. And to me, it's like less about the appearance, the aesthetics, right? I mean, there's a little bit of that, right? I mean, when you are a woman debating a man, I think it certainly makes sense to demonstrate to people like, I'm not afraid of this guy. I will go right over and talk to him face to face. But I think the other thing was clearly their entire strategy was rattle his cage from the beginning, right? And you could see he walked out not just like in his normal sort of plodding, just arm swaying way, but also he walked out tentatively. And timidly. And when she started walking toward him, I think his brain went, holy shit, what's happening? Right. And then I think that a lot of thought went into, what do you say? Because, it's natural to a person you've never met to walk over, shake their hand, say your name. But then the natural thing is like, good to meet you, pleasure to meet you, honor to meet you, nice to meet you, and you're like, well, none of that's true. I can't say any of that. And then you think, well, maybe you just say, thanks for being here. And then you're like, yeah, but then it's like sort of, solicitous in a way, right? Of like, oh, I'm glad we could have this debate. Like, thanks for saying yes. It changes the power dynamic. And I love that she came with, let's have a good debate. I just thought it was great all the way around.
Yeah, it's almost a game theory situation where you don't want to be the person standing at the podium as the other person walks up to you because you look petty. So it almost makes total sense that this is what you do. Obviously, Trump has never decided to do this before. Interestingly, as we'll get to, it was the first time they've ever met because Trump didn't attend the peaceful transfer of power, in part because he did everything possible to make it unpeaceful. Strangely, today is 9/11. They appeared again today. We'll get to that and shook hands again.
Yeah, they're friends now.
Yeah, they're buddies. They're buddies. Well, she broke him, and so now he's
yep.
He's been fully transitioned. But that was the beginning of the debate. I think the start of this debate, if I'm being honest, was not great for Harris. I was getting text messages from people. I don't think it was horrible, but I just think I was getting text messages from people being like, hey,
we were all just worried because we were after the last debate, everything seemed so high stakes.
Yeah, and the first question was hard for her, which is, are you better off today than you were 4 years ago? And she didn't answer it, which was very noticeable in my opinion that she didn't answer it. And I was really concerned that Trump was going to make a moment out of it. And oddly enough, and this was the first of many mistakes he made on that debate stage, he did not press that point. And then they went back and forth. She had this odd moment about, I think this was the one strategic point I had questions about, which was the Goldman Sachs said this, Wharton said that answer. And I'm like, I don't know if that's how I would want to frame it. That was the high watermark for Trump and the low watermark for Kamala Harris. Everything went downhill from there, in my opinion.
Well, but even that moment, one, look, this is her first time doing this. Trump has done this a bunch of times. There was clearly, when that debate started, an enormous amount of adrenaline coursing through her body. and you could tell she had some nerves during the first answer. I actually disagree with you. I think that the going after Goldman Sachs and Wharton was the first salvo in what turned out to be a major strategy of hers during the campaign, which was to brilliantly drop in little trigger moments and words and phrases specifically crafted for an audience of one, Donald Trump, but in such a way that they could not possibly be read as petty by the audience. So to bring up Goldman Sachs right there in New York, you know he has a ton of Goldman Sachs friends over the years and considers that to be one of his places. And then to add onto it, Wharton, like, first of all, most people don't even know what the hell Wharton is. All right. So, and maybe they know about UPenn, which is actually the school where the Wharton Business, it's the university that holds the Wharton Business School. Most people don't know what that is, but he knows what it is because he went there. So that it was just a little like, let's start turning this dial on him. And it kind of worked. He actually was like, I went to Wharton. I know a bunch of professors there, which clearly he has talked to no professors there who have said good things about his economic plan, but they just save that for later. That can be a story later. We can't find any professors that said anything good about his economic plan.
What was fascinating here, and some of this data creeped out publicly because Pluff was tweeting the good stuff for the campaign. But, the campaign, for listeners, they do this thing called dial testing. So they put people in a room and I sat in these rooms in 2008 and people they like tell you, I like this answer, I don't like this answer. And then at the end, they poll the room on how they've been shifted or whatever. One interesting fact about this debate is Harris won the dial testing on every single section except for the economy in Afghanistan. And so those are the two areas. And I think from the campaign's perspective, they view it as an obvious win. But they're like, my sense is they're gonna, in the days ahead, they feel like they maybe left some stuff out on the field on the economy stuff and that they have a lot of work left to do there. But one answer, Jason, or exchange that was not a problem for the campaign was abortion, where I think Pluff tweeted out something like Trump was net -40, which is the highest he's ever seen or the lowest he's ever seen in his history of working in politics. This exchange on abortion did not go well for Trump. Let's start with Trump's part of the answer.
To the issue of abortion, President Trump, you've often touted that you were able to kill Roe v. Wade. Last year, you said that you were proud to be the most pro-life president in American history. Then last month, you said that your administration would be great for women and their reproductive rights. In your home state of Florida, you surprised many with regard to your 6-week abortion ban because you initially had said that it was too short. And you said, quote, I'm going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks. But then the very next day, you reversed course and said you would vote to support the 6-week ban. Vice President Harris says that women shouldn't trust you on the issue of abortion because you've changed your position so many times. Therefore, why should they trust you?
Well, the reason I'm doing that vote is because the plan is, as you know, the vote is, they have abortion in the 9th month. They even have, and you can look at the governor of West Virginia, the previous governor of West Virginia, not the current governor, who's doing an excellent job, but the governor before. He said the baby will be born and we will decide what to do with the baby. In other words, we'll execute the baby. And that's why I did that, because that predominates, because they're radical. The Democrats are radical in that. And her vice presidential pick, which I think was a horrible pick, by the way, for our country, because he is really out of it. But her vice presidential pick says abortion in the 9th month is absolutely fine. He also says execution after birth. It's execution, no longer abortion, because the baby is born, is okay. And that's not okay with me, hence the vote. But what I did is something for 52 years. They've been trying to get Roe v. Wade into the states. And through the genius and heart and strength of 6 Supreme Court justices, we were able to do that. Now, I believe in the exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother. I believe strongly in it. Ronald Reagan did also. 85% of Republicans do. Exceptions. Very important. But we were able to get it, and now states are voting on it. And for the first time, you're going to see, look, this is an issue that's torn our country apart for 52 years. Every legal scholar, Every Democrat, every Republican, liberal, conservative, they all wanted this issue to be brought back to the states where the people could vote. And that's what happened. Now, Ohio, the vote was somewhat liberal. Kansas, the vote was somewhat liberal, much more liberal than people would have thought. But each individual state is voting. It's the vote of the people now. It's not tied up in the federal government. I did a great service in doing it. It took courage to do it. And the Supreme Court had great courage in doing it. And I give tremendous credit to those 6 justices.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born.
I mean, look, the dude was like, I know I'm losing on this, and it's really making me mad. It's making me mad that I have to deal with this issue that I never wanted to deal with in the first place. And I go out and I do what the right wing wanted me to do. And now I got to eat this every day. So he just makes up a new thing. He just thinks after like, what, 100 years of abortion being an issue in American politics, that he could just tell voters that abortion means executing a baby that's already been born. Like, and that people are going to be like, huh, well, that's a horse of a different color.
Well,
I guess.
Well, did you catch any of the Jaguars Miami game this weekend?
I did not.
So, okay, the Jaguars were ahead, and there was this key moment where Travis Etienne is their running back for people listening, and I promise this isn't really going to be about sports. He's about to punch it in and I think bring them up like 4 touchdowns or something, right? And he's like basically running into the end zone, and the Dolphins punch the ball out into the end zone. They recover the ball. The next play, Tyreek Hill strike down the other way, 7 points, and then they rattle off 21 answered points. That's what happened here in this debate. Was basically Trump wasn't as far ahead as the Jaguars were ahead, but I think he was fairly confident heading into this answer that he did what he needed to do to at least try to get this to a draw. He was like feeling himself. And then everything turned from here. Let's go to Harris's answer.
Madam Vice President, I want to get your response to President Trump.
Well, as I said, you're going to hear a bunch of lies, and that's not actually a surprising fact. Let's understand how we got here. Donald Trump hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade. And they did exactly as he intended. And now in over 20 states, there are Trump abortion bans, which make it criminal for a doctor or nurse to provide health care. In one state, it provides prison for life. Trump abortion bans that make no exception even for rape and incest, which understand what that means. A survivor of a crime of violation to their body does not have the right to make a decision about what happens to their body next. That is immoral. And one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree. The government, and Donald Trump certainly, should not be telling a woman what to do with her body. I have talked with women around our country. You want to talk about this is what people wanted? Pregnant women who want to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied care in an emergency room because the healthcare providers are afraid they might go to jail, and she's bleeding out in a car in the parking lot. She didn't want that. Her husband didn't want that. A 12 or 13-year-old survivor of incest being forced to carry a pregnancy to term. They don't want that. And I pledge to you, when Congress passes a bill to put back in place the protections of Roe v. Wade, as President of the United States, I will proudly sign it into law. But understand, if Donald Trump were to be reelected, he will sign a national abortion ban. Understand, in his Project 2025, there would be a national abortion, a monitor that would be monitoring your pregnancies, your miscarriages. I think the American people believe that certain freedoms, in particular the freedom to make decisions about one's own body, should not be made by the government.
Thank you.
Yeah, what's really brilliant about this, and she did it several times throughout the debate, she had the discipline to understand which of his lies she needed to respond to and which of his lies the audience, even low information voters, would be like, that seems like bull. I don't.
You know what the funniest version of this is? I'm curious if you picked up on this too. The one that, in hindsight makes somewhat sense, but you wouldn't have picked it on the front end. The one that she doubled back to later on in the debate. You know what I'm talking about?
No. What do you mean?
Fracking.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
there was like a blizzard of insane lies, and she actually took another answer. It was the only time she did this, where she was like,
it's
"Look,
Pennsylvania."
She was like, "Let me make sure."
Yeah.
She's like, "Let me make sure I talk about fracking."
Well, and she managed to get a bank shot into Polish Americans in Pennsylvania as well.
I'm half Polish American myself. I'm excited. We're gonna get to that actually. Now, there's more on the abortion question worth talking about here. Trump refuses to have a position on this. He was pressed. There was a back and forth with the moderators where basically they were like, "Hey, J.D. Vance says that you'd veto a national abortion ban," and Trump has he's like an Olympiad at throwing his own people under the bus.
Oh my God, this was incredible.
He was like, he's like, Vance can have his own position. I have mine, which is crazy because Vance's own position is way more pro-life than Trump's.
Right.
But the only reason why he's saying Trump would veto an abortion ban is because he somehow must have gotten the signal that would help Trump, and he was trying to do his job on the ticket.
Well, that Vance is thinking if we don't win, I'm plan, or even if we do, I'm planning to run in the future. And Trump just made it Vance's position to oppose a national abortion ban, because Trump was just like, look, I'll say whatever I need to say to make this line of questioning stop. It's so ironic because every time he talks about abortion now, he sounds like a Democrat running between 2000 and like 2016 or 2020, because it's just basically the whole premise of every answer is, I don't think this should be a government issue. Can we stop talking about it, please? Because now that they've made it a government issue, they've made an issue state by state, they are eating it every day. And now our side is motivated, and it's changed. Like, there's a lot more pro-choice people now because of this. So they just sound, they're like tiptoeing around these answers and trying to figure out how to thread a needle. And they sound like Democrats had to sound for a really long time.
He could not have handled it worse. Could not have handled it worse.
By the way, this doesn't matter because he was totally misquoting Ralph Northam with that whole Virginia governor thing. But he's not even the governor of West Virginia. Several times.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what he was talking about that time, honestly, because I was like,
he got the wrong state.
That's what I was thinking about. West Virginia. I was like, West Virginia. Didn't that
it's
guy
Ralph
switch
Northam
parties?
from Virginia.
I was like, didn't the Democrat in West Virginia switch parties to the
and halfway through you can hear Trump going like, wait a minute, I don't want to say that because the governor of West Virginia endorses me. So then he's like, but the current governor's great. You're not even on the right.
I'd love to see like the mood inside the West Virginia's governor's mansion as they're panicking. They're like, oh my God, like these people are just gonna take Trump at his word. He couldn't have handled this worse. And when I say he couldn't handle it worse, I mean the entire body of Trump's engagement on this issue, and particularly the past few weeks. Like Stephen and I last week were unpacking Trump's flip-flops on abortion and how he just made a bad situation worse by flipping and then flipping back. And now I think this debate performance is as bad as it gets. Now, an area where you would have expected for Trump to do some damage to Harris because his polling, not because his position is particularly clear and sound on this, but because his polling is pretty good on this issue, is immigration. And this, I think, is going to go down in the history of debates as perhaps one of the smartest moves that has ever happened on a debate stage. Jason, do you want to tee this up? I'm sure our audience knows where we're going with this, but how would you describe what happened here?
Are we talking about her mentioning the rallies?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I let's not tee it up. Just go. Let's go. Let's watch this.
Let's watch it. All right.
Harris, thank you. President Trump, on that point, I want to get your response.
Well, I would like to respond.
Let me just ask, though, why did you try to kill that bill, and successfully so? That would have put thousands of additional agents and officers on the border.
First, let me respond as to the
Please.
rallies. She said people start leaving. People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go. And the people that do go, she's bussing them in and paying them to be there. and then showing them in a different light. So she can't talk about that. People don't leave my rallies. We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history of politics. That's because people want to take their country back. Our country is being lost. We're a failing nation. And it happened 3.5 years ago. And what's going on here, you're going to end up in World War III, just to go into another subject. What they have done.
So to explain what's going on here, you might not know this.
Tee it up, but Jesus.
You might not know this, but this was an immigration answer. so what Harris did?
I believe the question was, what would you do specifically?
Yes, yeah. What would you do? Or I think it was about. I think the original question was, why are you stymieing the GOP-led bill? Which is actually not a very flattering, way to start. But he deserves every bit of that. Harris gave her answer on immigration. And then at the end of her answer says, hey, let me talk about what's going on at Trump's rallies. And the way she framed it was so interesting because it was like sneaky. It was like, she said,
I'm going to do something rather unconventional or something. She was like that, and I want you to go to one of his rallies.
Yeah, and she didn't say, she didn't use a blunt object on this, although Trump should have been smart enough to understand what was going on. Instead of being like, hey, his rallies aren't that big, which would have maybe been like clued him to that this was like some kind of bait, which
she brought a new thing.
Yeah, she was like, people are getting bored and leaving. So they're showing up to the rallies and then leaving, which has got to that framing of it. I don't know what, Karen, shout out to Karen Dunn, my former boss who ran this debate prep, whoever was in that room, maybe like a psychologist or something, whoever came up with that angle was genius. Yeah. Because this was an area that the dials, you would expect him to be, this would be the one area you'd expect him to do particularly well. And he completely squandered the moment. And if not, made it way worse by looking so petty and dumb and made her look really smart.
This was the moment that he completely sputtered out. I mean, at this point, he was on tilt the rest of the debate. And it was genius. And, what's interesting is think of how many times when it would have been better for Donald Trump to just let the line of questioning end and go to another subject, that he was like, no, wait, I need to respond to that. When it was like, and then his response only made things worse. And it wasn't until like 3/4 of the way through the debate until she actually asked for a rebuttal to something. And there were many times when he said, she hates this country. She's trying to, just things that you would think a presidential candidate would be like, I need to respond to that. But she didn't. She had the discipline to understand it is better for me if we get to the next enormous disaster of an answer that he's going to give, rather than like, it's better to have him talking than for me to respond. And the only time she ever did it is she wanted to talk about guns, and she wanted to reinforce one more time that that she is not in favor of a fracking ban. That's the only time she ever did it. The rest of the time, he could say whatever he wanted about her, and she was just like, okay, fine, let's go to the next question.
Well, okay, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're just going to talk about more debate because this is really fun.
Yeah.
If you're dealing with a lot of stress, these feelings don't just disappear at bedtime. Do you have trouble falling asleep, waking up in the middle of the night, or not feeling rested in the morning? These are all signs that your bedtime routine could use an upgrade. Calm can help you learn to de-stress and fall asleep faster so you can get restful sleep every night. Calm is the #1 app for sleep and meditation, giving you the power to calm your mind and change your life. Calm knows that everyone faces unique challenges in their daily lives, and mental health isn't about a one-size-fits-all solution. That's why Calm offers a wide range of content to help you navigate life's ups and downs, with programs like meditations to help you work through anxiety and stress, sleep stories, sleep meditations, and calming music that will help you drift to restful sleep quickly and naturally. Grounding exercises, if you're feeling overwhelmed, these short guided sessions use sensation, movement, and breath work to help you relax and reset. And expert-led talks designed to help you handle grief, improve self-esteem, care for relationships, and more. Calm puts the tools you need right in your pocket and can help you dedicate just a few minutes each day to live a happier, healthier life. Stress less, sleep more, and live better with Calm. For listeners of our show, Calm is offering an exclusive 40% off Calm premium subscription at calm.com/majority. That's CALM.com/majority for 40% off. That's calm.com/majority. Sleep is so important, which is why I love my Helix mattress. With everything going on in life, from work to demanding schedules, to everything else happening, a good night's sleep is so essential. And my Helix mattress I've had for a few years now has just dramatically improved my sleep quality. The Helix lineup offers 20 unique mattresses, including the award-winning Luxe collection, which is actually what my mattress is, the newly released Helix Elite collection, a mattress designed for big and tall sleepers, and even a mattress made just for kids. So how you know which Helix mattress works for you and your body? Well, you could take the Helix Sleep Quiz and find your perfect mattress in under 2 minutes, and your personalized mattress is shipped right to your door free of charge. I took the Helix Sleep Quiz and I got that Luxe mattress, and it's just such an upgrade from what I've been using before. And Helix knows there's no better way to test out a new mattress than sleeping on it in your own home. That's why they offer a 100-night trial and 10 to 15-year warranty to try out your new Helix mattress. Helix has been awarded the #1 mattress pick by GQ and Wired magazine. It's even recommended by multiple leading chiropractors and doctors of sleep medicine as a go-to solution for improving your sleep. Helix is offering 25% off all mattress orders and 2 free pillows for our listeners. Go to helixsleep.com/majority. That's helixsleep.com/majority. This is their best offer yet, and it won't last long. With Helix, better sleep starts tomorrow. All right. Well, back to the debates here. This didn't get a lot of attention, but twice Trump was asked, it's a very simple question. Do you want our ally Ukraine to win the war? Here's just one of those examples.
Do you want Ukraine to win this war?
I want the war to stop. I want to save lives that are being people being killed by the millions. It's the millions. It's so much worse than the numbers that you're getting, which are fake numbers.
I mean, first of all, why is it important to say that there are more people dying than, there's lots of people dying. He just can't, the guy, my dad has this expression, the dude would lie when the truth would help. He just lies. It's incredible. Anyway, that's a minor point.
Well, Harris was ready with a response here.
I believe the reason that Donald Trump says that this war would be over within 24 hours is because he would just give it up. And that's not who we are as Americans. Let's understand what happened here. I actually met with Zelensky a few days before Russia invaded, tried through force to change territorial boundaries, to defy one of the most important international rules and norms, which is the importance of sovereignty and territorial integrity. And I met with President Zelensky. I shared with him American intelligence about how he could defend himself. Days later, I went to NATO's eastern flank, to Poland and Romania. And through the work that I and others did, we brought 50 countries together to support Ukraine in its righteous defense. And because of our support, because of the air defense, the ammunition, the artillery, the javelins, the Abrams tanks that we have provided, Ukraine stands as an independent and free country. If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now. And
I thought that was super strong.
A+ answer there.
Especially hey, you want to know if I'm ready to be commander in chief? I'm just going to list off a bunch of weapon systems. And also, by the way, in the way that I do it, demonstrate to veterans and others that I actually know what they do. She actually talked about those things in a way that demonstrates she understands what they are.
Yeah, and if you just take the content of what she's saying out of it, it's just the fluidity and crispness for which she presented her arguments was top notch. And in juxtaposition to what we are used to and what we see from Trump on this debate stage, where he is meandering, he's unclear, he's so fast and loose with the facts, but even when he's lying, you don't even know what he's saying sometimes. So it's the lie doesn't even have an impact because it's totally free of any context, right?
Mm-hmm.
This was one of the great performances, I think, in debate history.
Can I say something about why she was so crisp and why she was able to do that? And that is because Kamala Harris prepares more than her peers at every single level that she's been in. She prepares better than her peers. To be a Black woman who has ascended to the heights in politics or anywhere else that she has ascended to, the only way that you're going to get there, look, she is very talented. There's no doubt about that. But in a world that is stacked against you, that's not enough. What she has always done, what people have seen her do in Senate hearings, what she clearly did when she was a prosecutor, in my relationship with her, what I have seen her do is she does more homework and studies more than other people in her class. That's what she has always done. And that's how you get to a point where you can go through and recite prepared, studied, memorized lines, but in a way where they do not sound studied or prepared or memorized, because you've done them so much that you can inhabit them and you truly feel them. And then what happens is you're no longer thinking about delivering the lines the way you memorize them. You're feeling the lines. And that's what she was doing. And that's why her passion came through.
Well, there were almost no Trump supporters out there actually saying he straight up won this debate, but they were complaining about the moderators. Ben Shapiro said ABC's moderators are a disgrace to their profession. I mean, these are the kinds of things I was hearing from them. Tim Alberta had a different take on this. He said, one way to look at it, ABC moderators fact check Trump 2 to 3 times and Harris 0 times. Another way to look at it, ABC moderators fact check Trump 2 to 3 times instead of 500 times. Trump went on Fox News this morning and had some words for ABC.
Donald Trump, the candidate, has said in this election there will be a bloodbath if this and the outcome of this election is not to his liking.
And the bloodbath, you were talking about the economy. It's a term that's used a lot when people are talking about a bad economy. What's your reaction to why didn't the moderators correct her?
Because they're dishonest, and because I think ABC took a big hit last night. I mean, to be honest, they're a news organization. They have to be licensed to do it. They ought to take away their license for the way they did that. Bloodbath was referring to the economy. Everybody loved the term because as soon as they heard the word, it's sort of a vicious word. But referring to the economy, they have created an economy. Bloodbath was the word that I used. And it was fine in that context. And they were trying to make it sound like there was a riot or something, and it was a bloodbath. IVF, I was a leader on IVF, the IVF, which is fertilization. I was a total leader on that. When I first heard about it, like right from the beginning, I was one of the leaders on it, and the Republican Party has been a leader on it. She tried to say it was just the opposite.
I love, by the way, that one, he has to tell everybody that when he said it, everybody loved it. Okay. So, why is that important? Second, he clearly thinks that people who support him don't know what IVF is. Every time he's talking about it, he's like, that's fertilization. Okay. Thanks for letting us know.
So the moderators, if we remember what they corrected him on saying that we're not murdering infants. Seems like an important thing to let the American public know if you're a news organization. Another thing they corrected them on is the eating habits of immigrants in
Let's
Ohio.
do this.
Let's go to this clip.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there.
ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant community.
Well, I've seen people on television.
Let me just say here, this is
the people on television say my dog was taken and used for food. So maybe he said that, and maybe that's a good thing to say for a city manager.
I'm not taking this from
but
television.
But the people
I'm
on
taking it from
television
the city
saying
manager.
their dog was eaten by the people that went there.
Okay. She at this point was so in the pocket. She was feeling so good. Can we just play it again just up until the part where she very genuinely starts cracking up when he says this? Just let's do that part again.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the.
I just love that. I mean, that's the most natural possible reaction to that insane statement.
I don't even know where to start here, but I think like the obvious point to make here is when there are 50 million people or whatever watching this thing, maybe more, it's really important as a news organization to clarify that the people in your community are not eating your pets, because that could lead to extreme violence against those people.
Yeah,
At a very basic level. Never mind the debate about like journalism and the role of moderators and all that. That's just like a really important thing to clarify. As funny as the moment was, there are actual people living in this community who no doubt would be at risks, probably still are at very serious risk given the claims that Trump made.
Can we real quick? Eric Erickson had this tweet about.
Oh yeah.
This was my favorite reaction to this. So Eric Erickson is a conservative commentator, and he said, this is his tweet in all caps: "You stupid MFers just got Trump to repeat your lie about the pets. Congrats on setting the news stories tomorrow by lying, so Trump picks it up and says stupid shit." I love this because this is basically, for the last time, people, Burgundy will read whatever you put on the teleprompter. That's what it is. He's not like blaming Trump. He's like, you idiots that told this lie. I knew it was going to backfire, and now he saw it and he said your lie. It's your fault. Are you happy now? That I loved that. I mean, anyway.
Well, let me breeze through some of this other stuff because there's some other big news here we got to get to. Trump, Stephen and I talked last week about how Trump had multiple times over the course of the prior week mentioned that he had lost by a whisker. And we're like, hey, is this some is this the debate prep seeping through? Is this him trying to moderate his position and be more forward looking? Nope. He was asked about this and he repeated his election lies. We don't need to go through all that. It was not a great look for him. I would say the split screen generally was very, very bad for Trump. He looked upset. He wouldn't look at her. He looked more and more angry as the thing went on. And as you mentioned, Harris just looked like she's having a good time.
They used it brilliantly against him. I mean, the reason that they didn't want the microphones muted, I think it was twofold. I think one, she wanted to be able to fact check him in real time. And I think what she wanted to be able to do was when he said some crazy stuff, just be able to at least say, that's not true. Not fully interrupt him, but just say, that's not true. That's what I think she wanted. And two, they obviously wanted to aggravate him and have him start trying to talk over her and everything. They ended up getting both of those things. At one point, just the fact that she was saying, even without the microphones on, that's not true, was driving him nuts. And he at one point even said something to her about it. But she handled it all in such a way where she seemed completely calm, and clearly she gave a lot of thought to how to hold her face when he was doing different things. At one point he was saying something particularly ridiculous and egregious. She put her finger on her chin like, okay, I got to hear this. And then sometimes she would just laugh. Sometimes she would say, that's not true. But she was very careful to mouth it in a really, really understandable way where no matter who you are, you could understand exactly what she was saying. It was almost like the microphones were on for her and not for him. And then, they weren't, but it almost felt that way. And then the fact that she used the split screen to very clearly, at moments when she was confronting him, she turned and looked directly at him. And you could tell that he wouldn't look at her. And it came across like a child, like a child being scolded for something that they know they did wrong and that they are ashamed of. I mean, he looked ashamed as she shamed him.
Unbelievable. Well, voters picked up on this. So the Washington Post had a focus group of 25 undecided voters, 23-2 for Harris among undecideds. YouGov gave a poll of voters generally, 43-28 for Harris. Harris even won a majority of the Fox News focus group. Let's go to this clip, or plurality.
How many of you say Kamala Harris won after everything you saw tonight? Raise your hands high. How many of you say Donald Trump won? Raise your hands high. 1, 2. Okay, is that everybody? Let me do this again. How many say Kamala Harris won? Raise your hands high. I didn't see everybody. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. How many of you say Donald Trump won? Okay.
That's Fox News. I'm sure Trump didn't love seeing that on his TV.
Well, if you watch that whole clip, my favorite part of it is that the other networks, like CNN is like, let's get undecided voters because that's what matters. Fox is like, this is a group of Democrats, Republicans, and independents.
Right.
and like, we don't know who's who.
Right. I mean, it's so silly.
Like, okay, you just grab some random ass people. Anyway.
Even apparently, I wasn't watching Fox News, but people are saying even Fox News commentators couldn't say Trump won this thing. So needless to say, he lost. I think that this is a debate that will matter. It's not a done deal, obviously. Like, this was one important step along a journey. A lot still needs to go right here to win. I imagine you agree there's not going to be another one of these. Trump has already said he doesn't want to do another one, which is weird because he's going to need it probably, or at least he would benefit from it more.
Would you do another if you were Trump?
I mean, he would need it, I think. I mean, the momentum is now going to be in her favor.
Well, momentum, sure. But there's other ways to try and change the momentum. And one of them is not getting back in the ring with someone who just unabashedly beat your ass. I mean,
it shows you experiences and everything. He has participated in more presidential debates than anybody in history. And I wouldn't say it's paying off right now. Let's take a break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about Taylor Swift and we're going to talk about JD Vance.
Living a more heart-healthy life fuels everything you do. Introducing 3-in-1 blood pressure support plus CoQ10 from Superbeats Heart Chews Advanced. Paired with a healthy lifestyle, the grapeseed extract in Superbeats is clinically shown to be nearly 2 times more effective at promoting normal blood pressure than a healthy lifestyle alone. New Superbeats Heart Chews Advanced supports healthy CoQ10 levels, an important nutrient for heart health. Superbeats Heart Chews are incredibly delicious and so much better than any alternative supplements out there. Seriously, they do taste really, really good. I take my Superbeats Heart Chews each morning, and it's really kickstarted my morning routine. After taking my Superbeats Heart Chews, I feel like I have more energy. I'm ready to take on the day. Superbeats includes a powerful 3-in-1 formula for healthy blood pressure, featuring grapeseed extract, beetroot powder, and CoQ10. There's no pills to swallow, no ingredients to mix or prepare, and best of all, they're effective and clinically researched ingredients, and are the #1 doctor, pharmacist, and cardiologist recommended beet brand for cardiovascular health support. Find out how you can get a free 30-day supply on bundles of new Superbeats Heart Chews Advanced and save 15% by going to getsuperbeats.com. That's getsuperbeets.com.
All right. Well, Taylor Swift endorsed Swiftly after the debate, and she posted a photo of herself with a cat and then signed off as a childless cat lady. Let's go to this clip. Tim Walz was on MSNBC actually as this news broke, and Matt L read parts of this tweet or Instagram post to Walz.
I have to get your response to that, Mr. Governor.
All those things, I am incredibly grateful, first of all, to Taylor Swift. I say that also as a cat owner, a fellow cat owner. Look, Swifties, you heard it. We know that it's there. That was eloquent, and it was clear. And that's the type of courage we need in America to stand up. We've seen it out of those Republicans who were at the DNC. We've seen it out of women who would like to have their own personal lives kept personal, but are forced to go out there because they nearly died because they can't get abortion services in a pregnancy. And now you have somebody like Taylor Swift coming out, making that very clear. This would be the opportunity, Swifties. KamalaHarris.com. Get on over there. Give us a hand. Get things going.
Well, is there anything, I'm sure you've read the text of this. Was there anything that stood out to you? I think for me, it was the part where she mentioned that Trump's team was using AI to imply that she had supported him and that she felt the need to clarify things. I thought that was an incredibly smart framing. I suspect she would have done this anyway, but that is an easy way to explain to your fan base, which no doubt is going to include some Republicans, to say, look, like they forced my hand here by lying about me.
Yeah, it's also a really smart way of not just endorsing your candidate of choice, but making sure that the people who follow you and feel very strongly about you, your fans, understand that you have also been wronged by this person. You know, is to say like, hey, Swifties, this is who I'm voting for. And also, this is what this guy did to me. And but she didn't do it in a grievance laden way. But if you've decided this is my candidate, do what you need to do to help your candidate. And one of the things you can do is make sure that your supporters understand that this is personal now. Because what's personal to you is personal to them. That's one of the very unique things about the Swiftie community. And it's really easy to laugh about Hollywood endorsements and that kind of stuff. Or, I mean, she's not Hollywood, but you know what I mean? This is a real one. This matters because it's not hard to figure out the impact that she has. I mean, look at how many young women who didn't previously care about football are now, they don't just care about football, they have a team and a favorite player. And, because it's not just like we love her music, like they have a connection to her and it is quite real.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that team, Trump went on Fox News. Let's go to this clip. I think you're going to appreciate this clip, Jason.
Just to finich up on that point, then.
By the way, Lawrence is doing a very good job, I have to say. He really is.
He's doing a great. Hey, I've got a quick question for you. Out of nowhere, after the debate last night, Taylor Swift endorsed Kamala Harris. What do you think?
Well, I actually like Mrs. I actually like Mrs. Mahomes much better, if you want to know the truth. She's a big Trump fan. I was not a Taylor Swift fan. It was just a question of time. She couldn't. You couldn't possibly endorse Biden. You look at Biden, you couldn't possibly endorse him. But she's a very liberal person. She seems to always endorse a Democrat, and she'll probably pay a price for it at in the marketplace. But no, I like Brittany. I think Brittany's great. Brittany got a lot of news last week. She's a big MAGA fan. That's the one I like much better than Taylor Swift.
Right. Brittany is Mahomes. Yeah, they're Mahomes. They're great friends.
The wife of the great quarterback, and he is a great quarterback.
My favorite team from Kansas City.
I think she's terrific.
Okay, let's unpack this. I see what you did there. Let's unpack this. First of all,
I'm so glad you didn't click on that link. I was so worried.
I was the only one I didn't click on.
Just before
you jerk. All right, here's. Let's talk about this. Anybody who's interested can go. I have a long post about this that I put on Twitter. That Brittany Mahomes was found. She liked an Instagram post of his and then unliked it and has said nothing else. And meanwhile, like, Patrick Mahomes is the guy who stood up and said Black Lives Matter, forced, actually was an activist about it. Her only time she's ever talked about him publicly, she tweeted critically of him. But, Trump has been like, oh, she's for me. I love how at the beginning of his answer, he can't remember her name. So he just calls her Mrs. Mahomes. And then he's on the phone. So clearly somebody writes on a piece of paper, Brittany, and then he goes back and says her name. So look, good for him. I guess, I feel sorry for Brittany Mahomes because she is now forced into this position where if she says anything publicly, if she says like, no, I'm not for him, then like tons of people are going to be mad at her. If she says I'm for Kamala, then tons of people are going to be mad at her. And she's not like Taylor Swift. She's never taken a political position before. She's not a public figure in her own right. She's done a lot of good things. I think it sucks for her. But I see what you did there.
I am not going to comment. Chiefs fans out there, I love you. That one was for you. I love having you in my life. Elon Musk also had a fairly
this is so creepy. Yeah,
he said, I don't even understand this. He says, fine, Taylor, you win. I will give you a child and guard your cats with my life.
Yeah. I actually didn't understand this at first. Like I had to read this several times. I still didn't get it. And then I figured out that what he's saying, he wants to impregnate her, because I saw other people explaining it.
Doesn't sound like a guy who committed sexual harassment of his flight attendants, as alleged.
Not at
all. Okay, JD Vance. Two things here on JD. One is that.
Can I say one last thing about the Taylor Swift bit?
Yeah.
I thought Tim Walz did a convincing job of acting like he had no idea this was going to happen.
I heard from people that they didn't know. That's what I was hearing.
Well, the idea that the Harris campaign hasn't been in touch with somebody in Taylor Swift's orbit, like that's a huge endorsement for you. Clearly, you're going to be reaching out. There's going to be some kind of communication back and forth, just because like Taylor Swift's not going to be rude. They're not going to completely refuse to respond to you. They must, I mean, clearly they had some idea that something like this was coming. And the fact that she did it immediately after the debate, I look, I'm not trying to be a conspiracy theorist, but if I'm the Harris campaign and I'm talking to somebody in Taylor's orbit and we're talking about when would be a good time, I'm thinking, look, if the debate goes great for us, it would be awesome if right after that, the first thing that happens is Taylor Swift endorses. If the debate doesn't go great for us, it'd be great if the first thing that happens is Taylor Swift endorses. Either way, it's what the story is either
point.
And this happened, or oh, we don't need to talk about that because this happened. So
I hadn't thought about if they'd lost, because winning, I'm like, I almost would save this for a day where there's good news for Trump, but I hadn't thought about the fact that if it'd been mixed results or a loss, this would have been a really good thing to drop.
Let's also talk about why this matters so much. It's not just that her fans believe in her so much. It's that, like, when you have a daughter who's a Swiftie, the family just in the same way, like if you have a daughter who becomes a huge Chiefs or Bills fan, the family tends to go along with it, right? And so this is not just about young women. It's also about their brothers and their sisters, and particularly their moms, to some extent their dads, but definitely their moms. In a lot of houses where dad is for Trump and dad is voting for Trump and mom's not too big on Trump, but she went to the Taylor Swift show and she saw how happy it made her daughter, and she's seen like the level of confidence and belief in herself that her daughter has gotten out of the identity that she's attached, or not attached, but what she's learned from the example of Taylor Swift. It will matter to people. It's a big deal.
Yeah. Well, let me bring this mood down by talking about JD Vance. He'd been pressing this claim about the Haitian immigrants eating cats and dogs. And he was pressed on this, and many times, including in the spin room. Let's go to this clip.
Competence of Kamala Harris.
Senator Vance, what do you say to Haitian Americans and Haitian immigrants who say spreading false claims about them put their lives at risk?
Well, I don't think that no one has spread false claims. What they've said is that a small migrant community, 20,000, so it's big for the city of Springfield, but it's small compared to all Haitians in the United States of America, that small migrant community has caused a lot of problems. It's led to higher rates of communicable diseases. That's a verifiable fact. It's led to animals disappearing. Many of my constituents have said that has been happening. It's led to higher home prices. That is a verifiable fact. So this influx has led to a lot of.
But you said that immigrants have eaten animals, and city officials have said that that's not true.
City officials have said that's not true. That's not actually accurate. What they've said.
Springfield city manager said there's no evidence that immigrants are eating animals, and you have been saying, and Donald Trump just said on stage that they are eating animals. I'm asking you. Yes, I'm asking you. I'm asking you.
Can you answer
go ahead.
Can you ask the question and then let me answer it?
Yes, please.
The city manager said there's no verifiable evidence. A lot of residents on the ground have said that there is. That just means the city manager, I think, isn't fully in touch with what's going on the ground there. I've heard from many of my own constituents who have seen these things with their own eyes, who have seen these abductions with their own eyes, who have seen geese being taken out of local parks and slaughtered in front of their eyes. What do I think is a bigger problem? Insulting 20,000 people, or the fact that my constituents can't live a good life because Kamala Harris opened the border? I think it's Kamala Harris needs to do her job.
A lot of these Haitian immigrants have moved
and healthier in this country.
A lot of Haitian immigrants have moved.
So, like, let's say you're before the debate, you're sitting around, you're the brain trust, you're Tulsi Gabbard and whoever else is there, and you're like, what do we want people talking about tomorrow? And clearly, what you came up with was whether or not animals in Springfield, Ohio have been abducted and eaten, and whether or not that's true. That's brilliant. Just brilliant move on their part, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, we could spend a lot of time on this in a normal day. We could. It's just a real marker of the moral decline of JD Vance. It's decline might be giving him too much credit, but just how this guy has totally sold out. There's no way.
Can I say something about Tulsi Gabbard here?
Oh yeah,
which is that I have to commend her, because 3 years ago, when we were in the backyard at George Soros's house, and she laid out for me her plan to go in as a sleeper agent into the Republican Party and work her way in and spend 3 years making them believe that she was a real Republican now so that she could get Donald Trump to say even crazier stuff in a debate. I was like, Tulsi, that's never going to work. It's never going to happen. You'll be found out. And I got to say, like, she was right and I was wrong.
Well, JD Vance also was asked whether he would have certified the last election. Let's see what he had to say.
He was asked to not certify it.
Sure.
So would you have certified it last year for the third
Again,
time?
I would have asked the states to submit alternative slates of electors and let the country have the debate about what actually matters and what kind of an election that we had.
You
in
wouldn't
these
have
important
certified
states.
it, to be clear.
I would have asked the states to submit alternative slates of
I think
electors.
that's what you're saying.
That's what I would have
So-
done. Again, I've said that publicly many times.
I mean, am I wrong, or did he just say we would have just had the House of Representatives vote on it? Isn't that what he's saying?
That's basically what he's saying.
Yeah, he's like, I would have done the coup.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Not surprising.
Speaking of Ohio, there were parents of a young girl who was killed, or a young boy who was killed in an incident that Donald Trump mentioned on the stage, which was, I think it was a car accident involving an immigrant. And they had some words for Donald Trump about the way he portrayed their son's death.
Using Aiden as a political tool is, to say the least, reprehensible for any political purpose. And speaking of morally bankrupt, politicians Bernie Moreno, Chip Roy, J.D. Vance, and Donald Trump, they have spoken my son's name and used his death for political gain. This needs to stop now. They can vomit all the hate they want about illegal immigrants, the border crisis, and even untrue claims about fluffy pets being ravaged and eaten by community members. However, they are not allowed, nor have they ever been allowed, to mention Aiden Clark from Springfield, Ohio. I will listen to them one more time to hear their apologies. To clear the air, my son, Aiden Clark, was not murdered. He was accidentally killed by an immigrant from Haiti. This tragedy is felt all over this community, the state, and even the nation. But don't spin this towards hate. In order to live like Aiden, you need to accept everyone. Choose to shine, make the difference, lead the way, and be the inspiration. What many people in this community and state and nation are doing is the opposite of what you should be doing. Sure, we have our problems here in Springfield and in the U.S., but does Aiden Clark have anything to do with that?
Man, props to that guy.
Yeah. I mean,
not just for taking the position, but for like, that
you wouldn't
takes a
begrudge
lot of
somebody
moral
whose
courage.
kid was killed in an accident for feeling anything, right? But the fact that he is able to speak out the way that he did and show compassion even for somebody who had brought tragedy upon his family is really fascinating.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of tragedies, Jason, it's 9/11. The weather is eerily identical to the 9/11 weather from September 11th, 2001. Biden, Harris, Trump, Bloomberg, and Vance were all in New York City together this morning or yesterday morning and appeared together. And even I think Harris and Trump even shook hands again. Let's go to this clip. We're all good. Yeah, so for people who are listening on audio, they're just lining up while I don't know, some random Trump stan is screaming at them, but they shook hands.
She said something to him.
Yeah, what do you think that she said to him?
I think she was like, hey, that was great. Let's do it again. You know,
Is it
I
been
mean,
recorded what she actually said?
no,
I'm
I don't
really
know, but I
curious.
mean, and more than likely, she probably said like, you know, thanks for being here. It's an important day or something like that. But, yeah, I mean, it kind of makes me look. He and JD Vance are there because that's where the cameras are and everything. But it does make me nostalgic for the times when it wasn't that long ago when people of opposing parties, even during an election, came together and like marked important American moments. Like it wasn't that long ago.
It's
So
become in a way a tradition. If you think about it now, I remember now as I am hearing this, I'm like, oh, I now am remembering all of these moments right before these big elections where they go to ground zero. Um, Curious that that Giuliani wasn't there, and well, he usually tends to attend these events, and I'm not sure. Maybe he was there, but he just wasn't in this particular clip. But Eric Adams, who is staring down potentially an indictment in New York, which in normal times we probably would have talked about in this podcast,
yeah,
wasn't appearing at least with them, which probably isn't accidental. That is a tragic thing going on here. A plug to the audience. The New Yorker had an article years ago called "The Real Heroes Are Dead." It is a beautiful article and well worth reading if you're looking to revisit 9/11 history. It's all about somebody who died tragically that day and just what kind of person he was. It's one of my favorite long form articles ever. With that, Jason, one for us. What's happened in your world?
I was just going to say about that article is that
Yeah.
I went ahead and read it, and Jesus, I mean, it was really good, and I had never seen it before. And I actually, Diana came in. I was about halfway through it, and she's like, "What are you reading?" I was like, "I don't know." Ravi, said I should read this, and I was like, "I don't know what it is." And then halfway through, I understood what it was, and it was like pretty emotional. Like, I guess the one for us is I never really know how to mark this anniversary, and I tend to sometimes it reminds me a little of Veterans Day or Memorial Day. Like I get pretty emotional on 9/11 because because it's 9/11, but also because for me, like, and for so many of us, it's just such a watershed moment in my life and for the country. I mean, it's our generation's Pearl Harbor, and I just never know how to feel about it, I guess.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I actually was tearing up this morning just randomly as I was putting this thing together. Um, the outline just when I was kind of going through thinking about the article in the New Yorker and everything. And the zip code I grew up in, 10314, is I think the second hardest hit in the entire country, 9/11. And cops, firefighters, my neighbors, my buddy who was on my floor. I was a freshman in college up in Binghamton that year. A buddy of mine who also is from the same zip code, grew up down the street from me, was on the same dorm floor as me. His father was a police officer who went missing that day, and so basically every weekend from then on out, I would drive him home. This guy named James Leahy, my friend, and we would talk. And he was holding out hope during those drives that his dad was still. And it was such a strange time. And I think about, I remember I went, they kept canceling classes, and you must have been in college too at the same time.
Yeah, I was an American in DC.
They kept canceling classes. I remember I found myself in Oneonta, which is another town. One of those weekends, I just went to another college town where some of my other friends were staying. And I remember sitting in a pizzeria, and I was next to my buddy Waleed, who I think listens to this podcast. And I was like looking up at the TV, and Bush was giving that speech with the bullhorn.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it was like that day or it was just a rerun or something. And I just remember thinking to myself, like, I hated Bush before all this, and I hated him afterwards. But he was so good in that particular moment. And I was thinking to myself, like, where are you, George W. Bush? Just I was thinking about today. It's like, where are you today? Like during all this,
No, I mean,
Dick Cheney. We didn't talk about is that Dick Cheney came out. I know a lot of people have feelings about it, but it's like, look, in saying that the endorsement is accepted doesn't mean that you say that you accept this guy's long track record of egregious public behavior and decisions. I think we all.
Yeah. Look, I think it's really important for people to remember that not only did George W. Bush invade the wrong country, and I mean, he did a lot of really stupid, inexcusable things, But it's important for us not to think that just because Donald Trump has been so terrifically and horrifically bad, that we don't have a lot to be upset with George W. Bush about. I mean, for instance, look, right after it happened, I was very supportive of everything George W. Bush was wanting to do right after 9/11, right up until he talked about Iraq.
Yeah.
And then I was like, what are we doing here? And by the way, like by this point, I'm already enlisting. I'm already going in. And then, but for me, it was the thing I've never forgotten is that, when they asked George W. Bush, what should people do? He was like, they should go shop. And it's that, to me, that's the Republican politician instinct, never to ask people to sacrifice in any way. You can trick them into sacrificing. You can screw the poor over, but you cannot ask people who have anything to ever give anything of themselves. It is the opposite of the John F. Kennedy ask not approach. And the fact that George W. Bush is sitting on his ranch and painting pictures of wounded veterans and thinking that that absolves him of everything he did. And apparently it hasn't. I would happily eat my words on this if he does something about this in the next few days. But the fact that it hasn't apparently occurred to him to come out and say what we all know is true, which is he's voting for Kamala Harris. Like, he is voting for Kamala Harris, and honestly, he's a
write-in type of guy. I could see him being like totally spineless.
No, he voted for Joe Biden and he voted for Hillary Clinton. I promise you.
Well, here's the thing. Here's what he says and why it's total BS is that he says his reason for not coming out generally, this is what people in his circle say, is that he likes to give, like, he doesn't think that it's appropriate for former presidents to like weigh in and yada. But he has weighed in and endorsed Republicans in the past. He endorsed Romney, I believe. He definitely endorsed John McCain. He's held fundraisers for Republican senators. So he gets involved when it's partisan. And so now it's time to...
I'll tell you what he thinks. He thinks I did my part. I don't owe anybody this. And I'm sorry, you owe us a lot.
Yes.
Because you majorly screwed things up. You invaded the wrong country, got a bunch of people killed, Iraqis and Americans and other nations. No, you actually owe us a lot. You have a lot to undo. And
and it's not something like in and of itself that's going to change the election, but you can imagine in a world where Romney, George W. Bush, Cindy McCain, all these people, you basically can say like the entire history of Republican candidates who've gotten the nomination before this guy and their families are all against this guy, including his former vice president and many members of his cabinet. The totality of that has got to matter somewhat.
At least come out and say, no, he should just come out and say that he's supporting Kamala. That's what he should do. He and Taylor Swift should do an event together. I don't care. But not long ago, there was a place here that in the area where I live that was going to host a bunch of his paintings. And they reached out to me and they're like, would you please come and speak at this event? And I was very polite. I was like, no, thank you. I appreciate it, but no thanks. And what I wanted to be like is like, F no, I will not come and be a part of the George W. Bush absolution tour. No, I'm not going to be a part of that. So anyway, I don't know how I got off on that, but thanks. This has actually been a really fun episode because she done whooped his ass yesterday. What I think we should leave this with is to remind people that this is still going to be a super close election. She kicked his butt in that debate. And if we're really, really lucky for a while, that'll move the needle to maybe 3 points, maybe, but that's the max. And the truth is that in order to win this electoral college, we've got to have a 3-point lead going into election day, probably. If more. And so nobody should relax at all. Everybody has to keep working really hard. So with that, thank you everybody for listening. Thank you to the Midas Mighty. Please leave a 5-star review. You can find me at Jason Kander on social media. You can find Ravi at Ravi M. Gupta. Remember, we all have a platform. Make sure to use yours today.